everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going way back in time to explore the lives of some pretty incredible women from early Islam.
Oh, very cool.
And get this, they all share the same name, Asma.
Hmm, that's fascinating. The idea that maybe a single name carries shared characteristics across different individuals.
Yeah, it really makes you think, right? Like, remember when we talked about all the Nusaybas and how they were known for their bravery? Maybe there's something similar going on with the name Asma.
It's possible.
Yeah. Okay, so our main source material for this deep dive is a lecture by Dr. Omar Suleiman for the Yaqeen Institute.
Oh, okay, cool.
Specifically, the transcript of his YouTube video, Asma Bint Yazid, the orator of the women the firsts. And he seems to think that Asma might be like the name for strength and resilience.
I like it. So to really understand this, we need to explore the lives of these women.
Exactly.
Dr. Suleiman focuses primarily on Asma bint Yazid, a woman known as Katiba Nisa, which means the spokesperson of the women. But to appreciate her impact, we'll first meet a few other Asmas who helped shape the early Muslim community.
Okay, so let's start in Mecca, where we find two prominent Asmas. First, there's Asma bint Abu Bakr, a woman who played a key role in the Hijra,
Right.
the Prophet Muhammad's migration from Mecca to Medina. Some of you might remember this event from our earlier deep dive.
Yeah, for sure.
Asma bint Abu Bakr is known for her courage and her quick thinking during that very dangerous journey. She's the one who tied her waist belt together to create a rope for the Prophet and her father, Abu Bakr, to use as they hid in that cave.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't stop there. She stood up to Abu Jahl, one of the Prophet's fiercest opponents, when he came looking for her dad.
Wow.
Imagine this young woman just standing tall and strong,
Yeah.
her voice not wavering at all as she confronts this powerful and intimidating man.
That's wild.
And her strength and conviction never wavered. Even at 100 years old, she stood up to a tyrannical ruler without even flinching. That's true resilience.
Absolutely. It speaks to a deep inner strength that seems to have defined her entire life.
Okay, so moving on to another Asma from Mecca. We have Adarama bint Umays, the wife of Jafar ibn Abi Talib.
Okay.
She was known for her intelligence and her deep understanding of Islam.
She's a great example of how women in early Islam were actively involved in shaping religious discourse.
Definitely. For instance, she washed Abu Bakr's body after his death, which was a major honor, and she was known for her very sharp intellect.
Yeah, and she argued for the virtue of those who migrated twice.
What does that mean, migrated twice?
Well, so some Muslims first fled to Abyssinia to escape persecution in Mecca.
Which is modern-day Ethiopia, right?
Right, exactly. And later they joined the Prophet in Medina. So Asma bint Umays believed that these individuals deserved special recognition for their double sacrifice.
That's really interesting. It adds another layer to our understanding of those early migrations. And on top of all that, she insisted on joining the farewell Hajj,
Wow.
one of the most important pilgrimages in Islam, while she was 9 months pregnant.
Oh my goodness.
And she ended up giving birth along the way.
Now that's commitment. It speaks volumes about the strong will and dedication of these early Muslim women.
Okay, so now let's journey to Medina, where we encounter even more inspiring Asmas.
I'm ready.
First, we meet the mother of a prominent companion named Abdullah ibn Masud. Interestingly, her given name is actually unknown, but we know that she was also an Asma. And her story is just as incredible as the others. She pledged allegiance to the Prophet at Aqaba while she was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And get this, she gave birth on the same day.
No way. Talk about dedication.
I know, right?
Mm.
This woman was clearly committed to her faith from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
Okay, and now get this, there's another Asma from Medina, and her story is a bit of a surprise. She was the mother of Abu Jahl.
Oh, wow. Really? That's an interesting twist.
You'll remember that Abu Jahl was one of the most staunch opponents of Islam, and yet his own mother embraced the faith and migrated to Medina to be part of the growing Muslim community.
It really highlights the complex dynamics of those times. Families were sometimes divided by faith, with some members choosing to embrace Islam while others resisted it.
It reminds us that historical narratives are rarely simple.
Yeah. There's always nuance and complexity, especially during times of major social and religious change. These contrasting stories show the complexity of early Islam. But now let's turn to a woman whose voice cut through this complexity, Asma bint Yazid.
This is the Asma who is known as the spokesperson of the women.
That's right. She was the daughter of Yazid ibn Sakan, a martyr who defended the Prophet Muhammad during the Battle of Uhud.
Just imagine growing up with that legacy.
Yeah, you can only imagine. And her story doesn't end there. She was also the first woman to be divorced during the time of the Prophet Muhammad.
Wait, really? That's significant, right? I mean, this is a time when social norms were being challenged and redefined.
Absolutely. And this event actually played a role in shaping what we call Islamic jurisprudence. Essentially, the legal reasoning and methodology used to derive rulings from Islamic sources. The verses about divorce in the Quran were revealed in relation to Asma's situation.
Wow, so her personal experience contributed to the development of Islamic law.
It did, and it highlights how real-life situations often played a role in shaping Islamic jurisprudence. Asma's story is also significant because she was a narrator of hadith.
Oh, cool. So, like the sayings and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she narrated hadith, especially those focusing on women's issues, giving us valuable insights into the Prophet's interactions with the women of Medina.
That's so cool. So, it's like having a window into the lives of those early Muslims. Okay, so I'm dying to hear about her most famous story, the one where she directly addresses the Prophet Muhammad on behalf of the women of Medina.
Ah, yes. That's the story that really solidified her reputation as the spokesperson of the women. It takes place during a gathering where the Prophet is sitting with his companions, probably discussing matters of importance. It was a male-dominated space, as was the norm in those times.
And then Asma walks right up to him, not intimidated in the least.
Exactly. She's carrying the weight of the women's concerns on her shoulders, ready to speak her mind.
Yeah.
And she doesn't hold back.
So, what does she say?
She starts by saying, "May my mother and my father be sacrificed for you, O Messenger of Allah. I am the ambassador of the women to you."
That opening line is so powerful.
Definitely. It immediately commands attention and establishes her purpose.
Right.
She's not just there for herself. She's representing an entire group of people. And remember, this is during a time when women were not typically expected to speak up in public, especially not in front of men.
Exactly. Her boldness is truly remarkable. And she goes on to explain that all the women from east to west share the same concerns that she's about to raise.
Oh, wow. Okay, I can't wait to hear what she says next.
Well, she starts by acknowledging the roles women played in society. She says, "We, the women of Medina, are the pillars of our homes. We take care of our households, care for our husbands, fulfill the needs of the house, and we also bear your children." It's like she's saying, look, we're essential to this community and our voices deserve to be heard.
Exactly. And then she gets to the heart of the matter. She points out that the men get to go from Juma to Juma.
The Friday prayer.
Yes, the Friday prayer, a central gathering for Muslims. They pray alongside the Prophet, visit the sick, attend funerals, and even go on Hajj and battles. Basically, they're constantly involved in religious and social activities.
And women are often left behind.
Yes.
I can see where she's going with this. It's like she's saying, hey, we want to be a part of all this too. We want to earn those spiritual rewards.
Yes. And this is where the concept of ajur comes in.
Ajur.
Ajur is a crucial concept in Islam, referring to the spiritual reward or merit earned through righteous actions and deeds. Asma is essentially asking if women receive the same divine reward as men for their efforts.
Okay, that makes sense. So she's basically saying we hear about all these rewards and blessings for participating in religious activities, but we often don't have the same opportunities.
Exactly. And she's not afraid to express the frustration that many women felt. She tells the Prophet, when the men go out with you and do all these things, we're the ones guarding the homes, guarding the wealth, taking care of everything, raising the children. We're left with all this, and we hear all these hadith about these amazing things, but do we get a share of the reward?
That's such a valid point. She's basically saying, we're doing our part, but are we being acknowledged for it? What does she say next? I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Well, she delivers this incredibly powerful line, Allah is it that we get a share of all this ajur. Don't we get to share in this measure with the men? It's a direct appeal not just to the Prophet, but to God himself.
Wow, that's incredibly bold. It takes a lot of courage to speak up like that, especially in that context. What was the reaction? I can't imagine everyone was thrilled about it.
You're right. The companions, the men who were gathered around the Prophet, weren't exactly happy with Asma's speech. The narration actually says they were upset and not happy. They even told the Prophet that they didn't know a woman could be guided to speak that way.
That's interesting. Why do you think they reacted so negatively? What does this tell us about the social dynamics of the time?
It was likely quite a shock to them. Remember, it was unusual for a woman to speak so boldly and publicly, especially on matters considered men's affairs.
I guess that makes sense. It's like she was challenging the very fabric of their social norms. But amidst this negative reaction, the Prophet's response is truly remarkable.
It really is.
Yeah.
He doesn't side with his companions or dismiss Asma's concerns. Instead, he acknowledges her courage and the eloquence of her words.
So what does he say?
He turns to his companions and asks them, have you ever heard a woman give a more beautiful speech than what this woman just gave? It's a powerful act of validation, silencing their disapproval and recognizing the significance of what Asma has just done.
That's incredible. He's essentially saying, listen up, this woman has something important to say.
Exactly. And then he turns to Asma and delivers a message of reassurance to all women. He says, go back to the women and let them know that when they do all these things you mentioned, showing goodness to their husbands, following them in that which is good, they will have the entire reward as well.
Wow, that's a pivotal statement. The prophet is confirming that women are equal partners in faith, that their contributions and sacrifices are just as valuable as men's.
It's a message that continues to resonate today as we thrive for gender equality in all aspects of life.
And I can only imagine how empowered the women of Medina must have felt after hearing this.
It would have been a huge victory for them, a validation of their concerns, and a reassurance that their efforts were not in vain.
Okay, so we've seen how Asma challenged gender roles and advocated for women's rights. But her story doesn't end there, right? I mean, didn't you say that she was also a warrior?
You're absolutely right. During the Battle of Yarmouk, a fierce fight against the Byzantine Empire, Asma wasn't content to just care for the wounded. When the enemy charged, she picked up a tent pole and defended herself, taking down 9 Byzantine soldiers.
No way. That's amazing. I mean, I knew she was brave, but that's next level. It really shatters the stereotype of these women being passive or solely relegated to domestic roles.
Exactly. They were active participants in all aspects of life, even in warfare.
Mm.
And it connects back to that idea we were talking about earlier, the name Asma being associated with strength and resilience.
Totally. Okay, so we've met quite a few Asmas so far, each one embodying strength, piety, and impactful roles in early Islam. It's amazing how their stories are so intertwined with the development of the Muslim community. But hold on, let's take a moment to process all this incredible information before we dive deeper into Asma bint Yazid's life and the impact of her legacy. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's amazing how these women, all named Asma, have left such a lasting impact on history.
It really makes you think about the power of individual stories.
Yeah, and how they can shape our understanding of the past.
For sure.
So before the break, we were talking about Asma bint Yazid's incredible bravery, not just as an advocate for women, but also as a warrior. It's inspiring to see how she defied expectations and contributed to her community in so many different ways. But I'm also really curious to learn more about her role as a narrator of hadith. You mentioned that she focused specifically on women's issues. What kind of insights can we gain from her narrations?
So remember, hadith are the sayings and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad,
Right.
and they provide valuable guidance for Muslims.
Okay.
Asma bint Yazid's narrations offer a unique perspective because they shed light on the Prophet's interactions with women and his teachings specifically related to women's lives.
That's so cool. It's like having a direct link to that time period, a way to understand the challenges and triumphs of those early Muslim women.
Exactly.
So what kinds of topics did her narrations cover?
Well, they cover a variety of topics,
Mhm.
like marriage, divorce, inheritance, and women's roles in society.
All issues that continue to be relevant today.
Absolutely.
In his lecture, Dr. Suleiman mentions a particularly interesting hadith narrated by Asma bint Yazid. It's about the Prophet describing the best and worst types of people. Do you remember that one?
Oh, yes. That's a powerful hadith that really gets to the heart of Islamic ethics and values.
So what exactly did the Prophet say?
He started by asking his companions, "Shall I not tell you who the best of you are?"
And I bet they were all like, yes, O Messenger of Allah.
They were. They
Yeah.
eagerly replied, "Yes, O Messenger of Allah."
Okay.
And then the Prophet says something incredibly simple yet profound. Those who, when you see them, they remind you of Allah.
Wow. That's really beautiful. It's like he's saying that the best among us are those who embody the divine qualities of compassion, mercy, justice, and kindness in their daily lives.
Exactly.
Okay, and then he goes on to describe the worst type of people.
He says that the worst people are those who are always slandering people and causing problems between people who love each other.
Essentially, those who spread discord and negativity within the community.
Exactly.
It's a powerful reminder that our words and actions have consequences, and we should be mindful of the impact we have on others.
Right. And there's another part to that hadith where the Prophet describes those who seek to ruin the lives of the innocent by gossip and slander.
Oh, wow.
He says these individuals lead the innocent into destruction.
It's a stark warning against spreading false information and engaging in harmful gossip.
Especially in today's world where information spreads so rapidly.
Right. It makes you think about the responsibility we have to speak truthfully and to consider the potential impact of our words.
For sure.
So these hadith, narrated by Asma bint Yazid, really give us a glimpse into the ethical teachings of the Prophet and the values that were emphasized in early Islam.
Yes. It's incredible how these teachings continue to be relevant centuries later.
Okay, so we've talked about Asma's courage, her advocacy, her intellect, and her role as a narrator of hadith. But Dr. Suleiman also highlights her generosity and hospitality. What can you tell us about that aspect of her life?
Well, she was known for her kindness and her willingness to share what she had with others. For instance, she would often prepare food and serve it to the Prophet and his companions outside the mosque after prayers.
That's so sweet. It's a
Uh,
beautiful example of her humility and her desire to serve her community.
And there's even a story about her inviting the Prophet and some of his companions to her home for a meal.
Oh, I'd love to hear about that.
So during that meal, something incredible happened. The Prophet told his companions to eat from a small dish,
Okay.
and it miraculously provided enough food for all 40 of them.
Wait, what? That's amazing. It sounds like a scene from a movie.
I know, right? Asma later said that after that day, she and her family never experienced a shortage of sustenance.
It's like a blessing for her generosity and hospitality.
Yeah, it really is.
So we've covered a lot about Asma bint Yazid. She was a warrior, a scholar, an advocate, a narrator of hadith, and a generous hostess. What a remarkable woman.
Yeah, she really was.
But before we move on, I wanted to circle back to something we talked about earlier. You mentioned that Asma was the first woman to be divorced during the Prophet's time, and that this event led to the revelation of verses about divorce in the Quran. Can you elaborate on why that's so significant?
Of course. So before her divorce, there were no clear guidelines for divorce in Islam.
Oh, okay.
So her situation essentially became a case study for establishing those guidelines.
Wow. So the verses about divorce in the Quran were revealed in response to Asma's case.
Exactly, providing guidance and clarity for future generations.
That's fascinating. It really humanizes the process of how Islamic law evolved. It wasn't just about abstract principles. It was also about addressing the real-life challenges and needs of the community.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that Islamic law is not a static set of rules. It's a dynamic system that has evolved over time, informed by real-life circumstances and interpretations.
This is really making me think. It's amazing how one woman's experience could have such a profound impact on the development of a legal system. So we've now met all these incredible women named Asma. Each one has challenged us to think about the role of women in early Islam, their strength, their contributions, and their lasting impact on history. What stands out to you most about these women?
Their unwavering faith, their courage in the face of adversity, and their unwavering commitment to contributing to their community.
I completely agree. And what's even more inspiring is that their stories continue to resonate today, even centuries later. Their fight for equality, their pursuit of knowledge, their compassion, their bravery, these are all qualities that transcend time and cultures.
For sure.
But focusing specifically on Asma bint Yazid, what do you think her legacy is? What will she be remembered for?
She's a symbol of female empowerment, a champion of women's rights, a scholar who preserved valuable knowledge, and a testament to the dynamic evolution of Islamic law.
I love that. She's a true inspiration for us all. A reminder that we can make a difference even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. But hold on. Let's take a moment to reflect on everything we've learned about Asma bint Yazid and the other incredible women named Asma. When we come back, we'll wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Asmas and consider how their stories can inspire us today. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the lives of these incredible women from early Islam, all named Asma. It's really amazing how they all embody this shared sense of strength and resilience,
Right.
almost as though like their name carried a certain weight,
Uh-huh.
a cultural understanding of those very traits.
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Like maybe they drew strength from knowing that others who shared their name also faced challenges and emerged as like beacons of faith and courage.
Totally.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of his lecture, Dr. Suleiman gives this really powerful call to action. He encourages his listeners to share these stories, especially with the Asmas, in their own lives.
Yeah. He says, if you know an asthma, send them this lecture.
And he goes on to say, if you have an asthma as a daughter or a sister or a mother, tell them, this is the strength, this is where it comes from.
That's beautiful. It's like he's saying, let's keep these stories alive. Let's inspire future generations with the legacy of these remarkable women.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that we all have a responsibility to share the stories of those who came before us, to keep their legacies alive, and to allow their wisdom to guide us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Asmas, I'm left with a feeling of awe and inspiration. These women were trailblazers, and their stories have so much to teach us about resilience, courage, and the power of faith.
They remind us that women have always played crucial roles in shaping history.
Yeah.
Even if their contributions have often been overlooked or undervalued, their stories encourage us to challenge assumptions, to fight for what we believe in, and to never underestimate the power of our own voices.
Right. Beautifully said. Considering everything we've learned about these remarkable Asmas, their courage, their advocacy, their unwavering faith, what's your final takeaway? How might their example inspire us to address the challenges and inequalities we face in our own time?
I think their lives serve as a testament to the idea that change is possible, even in the face of adversity.
Hmm.
They remind us that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world. By drawing inspiration from their strength, their resilience, their unwavering commitment to justice and equality, we can all find the courage to speak up to challenge injustice and to make a difference in our own communities.
Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. We hope you've been inspired by the stories of these remarkable women named Asma. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep the spirit of curiosity alive.